How many of you are a little surprised to see that I'm the invited speaker dressed like this? Yeah. Well, this is an example, and I'm going to be talking about my book that just got published called Perceptual Intelligence. And this is an example of how perception is not always reality. Normally when I speak, I wear a collared shirt and a blazer. So I've got one of the two ready. But you hardly recognize me now. So thank you again, Michelle and Akiva. I want to first tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm married to Selena, and we have twin girls. There's Selena. We have twin, she's got the kick-ass shoes, by the way. That's how you know Selena's in the room.
Those are hot.
And we have twin girls who are 11 years old, and we live in Santa Monica. Michelle asked me to speak tonight because we have some things in common. I'm a very big advocate of gender equality and female empowerment. And we have some other things in common too. Number one, I have a maiden name.
Yeah.
When Selena and I got married, we added each other's last names, and that's how we created Boxer Wachler. And I wrote a Huffington Post article about that 2 years ago. It also makes me one of the few men in the country with a maiden name. And after 24 years of marriage, I'm very well trained. I always put the toilet seat down. The second thing many of us have in common is that I don't watch football. And the third thing is I like flowers too.
So sweet.
So when we think about perceptual intelligence, I'm going to give you the definition. It's how we interpret our experiences to separate fantasy from reality. And a lot of people ask me, what was your inspiration to write this book? And it started when I was in 6th grade here at Franklin Elementary School, where I secretly checked out from the library, "Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret." I was curious how the mind of the opposite sex worked. At UCLA, I was a psychobiology major. I wanted to further understand the inner workings of the mind. But the real catalyst came when I was in Sochi, Russia in 2014 for the Winter Olympics. And I was there for moral support for my friend and patient, Olympic gold medal bobsledder Stephen Holcomb, who has a disease of the eye called KERATOCONUS, which I treated and restored his vision. In Sochi, I witnessed more than Stephen winning 2 Olympic bronze medals. I saw how Vladimir Putin was manipulating the world's perceptions of himself compared to what was really happening, and that's when I started writing. Another reason I wrote the book was to help people better understand and clarify what people mean and what they say and do, and that elevates your game so you can have what you want in life. Better job, better relationships, better sex. Yes, you just heard me say that. More success and more happiness. Without high perceptual intelligence, you'll have a hard time achieving these things because you keep repeating the same pattern. So again, the definition of perceptual intelligence is how we interpret our experiences to separate fantasy from reality. So it's like having a built-in BS meter in your head to make better, smarter decisions in your life. Now, just a quick raise of hands. How many people here think they have a pretty good handle on how to separate what's real from fake? And I'm not talking about Michelle's eyelashes.
Those look good. I paid a lot of money for those.
So I want to ask a few questions here. So first of all, who thinks that expensive sunglasses are better protection for your eyes than the $10 pair you might get at the drugstore at Venice Beach? Okay. Who thinks that organic food is healthier for you than non-organic food? Okay. Who thinks electric cars are better for the environment than gas-powered cars? Well, these questions really speak to how we interpret what we perceive and how our brain works, and that's a core part of perceptual intelligence. I want to first start with a humorous example of perceptual intelligence, or lack thereof. Has anyone heard of Kopi Luwak coffee? Anyone heard of that? It sounds pretty exotic, right? Well, it's actually made in Indonesia from coffee beans that fall on the ground and special cats eat them. They pass through it undigested and come out the back end. And by the way, somebody's got that job of picking those beans out and cleaning them. Now, the story is that these cats have a near magical ability to pick the very best beans, which makes this amazing coffee. And that's why people pay $100 a cup for it. Now, the reality, that was the fantasy. Now, the reality is the coffee's good, but it's not going to knock your socks off. But it's an example of how marketing can hijack your perceptual intelligence and waste your hard-earned dollars. Another example is where people with low perceptual intelligence can get into problems is on the internet with what people read in their social media and on websites. And the comedy website, some of you may have heard of, called The Onion, put out a joke press release stating that Johnson & Johnson, the makers of Visine, have now released and come out with eye whitening strips. Now, people started calling the company saying, where can I buy these strips? And they said, well, we don't make them. Well, then people started calling my office because I developed an eye whitening procedure. And my staff said, they don't exist. Well, then some people said, well, can I just buy those Crest teeth whitening strips and put those in my eyes? My staff said, no, that's dangerous. So you need to have critical thinking skills with what you read and what you hear. And that's part of perceptual intelligence, to separate fantasy from reality. And by the way, a great website to run things by you read about on the internet is Snopes.com. Now, another area where people can be influenced is with celebrities. And it's because of the halo effect. Now, some of you might remember actress Jamie Lee Curtis doing commercials for Activia yogurt. The problem was the company's claim of improved digestion was false. So here, a celebrity and a company hijacked the perceptual intelligence of a lot of people who went out and bought that yogurt expecting a benefit. But it's not just A-listers who can influence people. I'm going to read from the book here. Laughing all the way to the bedroom. Even comedians at the bottom of the pecking order have observed the effect of the halo's glint of celebrity on the PI of comedy club audiences. Being on stage, even in a small comedy club, bestows an aura of celebrity on those in the spotlight. After the show, comedians often hang around the bar, where chances are high that adoring fans will flitter to them like moths to the flame. The endearing industry term for these comedy groupies is chuckle fuckers. True. Comedians must have some measure of confidence, charisma, and command to hold their own on stage, all of which are considered seductive traits. Mainly, the fans are drawn in by the hint of celebrity status, granted sometimes small-time celebrity, and by the fact that these performers are more attainable conquests than rock stars or hunky actors. Now, we can't talk about PI and comedians without talking about Louis C.K. Yeah. So before I get to that, which I will, it reminds me of a Ben Franklin quote. Very simple, yet very powerful in terms of how to live your life without getting into trouble. Ben Franklin said, "Never do anything you don't want on the front page of the newspaper. Well, more specifically these days, the New York Times. Louis C.K. has high perceptual intelligence in his field of comedy because he understands the reality of what's funny. But he has low perceptual intelligence in his private life because he thought it was perfectly fine to masturbate or ask to do so in front of female coworkers and colleagues. Now, the women who allowed him to do this, well, they have low perceptual intelligence themselves because they were blinded by the glint of his celebrity. Would those same women have allowed the checkout guy at Whole Foods to do that in front of them? Of course not. And female comedians don't do this. Ellen DeGeneres, Sarah Silverman, and Amy Schumer haven't asked subordinates and colleagues to watch them masturbate. This is a male problem. Louis C.K., your power allows you to perform in front of sellout crowds, but it does not give you permission to masturbate or ask to do so in front of women in the entertainment industry. Harvey Weinstein, your power allows you to make Academy Award-winning movies, but it does not give you permission to take advantage of hard-working female actors. U.S. senators and congressmen, your power allows you to make the laws in our country, but it does not give you permission to sexually abuse your subordinates. Up at Hollywood and Highland, there's the Road to Hollywood, which is the path that's got those mosaic quotes along the way. Does everybody know that? And it ends in a giant fiberglass daybed with the quote, "How some of us got here." After the Weinstein story, the artist who created that denied that that was the casting couch. How many of you thought that represented the casting couch? Well, the public did too. And since then, management has removed it. But before the Weinstein story, how could we all have not protested that couch over the last 14 years since its installation? What does that say about our perceptual intelligence power? Perceptual intelligence plays an ensuing role with female empowerment. Issues and adversaries bring people together. In sports, fans are galvanized for their team against the other. After 9/11, our country was bonded. Women come together over important issues, and that helps them create healthy connections with each other, and that's empowering. That's high PI. Women support other women's businesses. That's empowering because women have each other's backs. Example, if you were organizing an event and you needed to hire a valet, would you just choose any company? Or perhaps would you choose the female-owned and operated Valet of the Dolls? Look at all of the support for the female business people and designers here at this event. 500,000 women marched in support of Hillary after the election. Michelle Obama recently said, quote, "I love my husband, he is my rock, but my girlfriends are my sanity," quote. She also explained that during the 8 stressful years in the White House, she needed her girlfriends more than ever before, which was healthy. The healthy connections that women make are responsible for the progress made with gender equality in our country. Think about that. The healthy connections that women make are responsible for the progress made in gender equality. When women come together for an issue, women are unstoppable.
Woo!
In the 1700s and 1800s, Women were literally and legally considered the property of men. It wasn't until the Married Women's Property Acts in 1834 where women were given an independent legal identity. What do you think the PI of society was about women back then? Low. But when you open up the giant history book, it depends on which page you're standing on whether that's high or low PI. I guarantee you, the men drinking beers in the taverns in Boston back then thought they had high PI about the status of women. So this shows that perceptual intelligence of society changes and evolves over time. But women came together again in healthy relationships that were made, and those connections, they helped get the right to vote through in 1920. And they did it again in 1972 with Title IX, which finally then became enacted in 1988. And that was really important for girls and young women in sports. That very much expanded that role. And team sports for girls and women are really important because it builds confidence. And that is empowering. But also, team sports teaches girls and young women that girls have each other's backs. Now, there's still areas of low perceptual intelligence in our country about gender equality. Out of college, women earn 82% of what men do. And at 10 years out of college, that gap widens to 69%. Regarding women's health, there's still low perceptual intelligence in a lot of places. Medical products, for example, they are tax-free. In 36 states, including California, tampons are taxed because they are not considered medical products. Yet, Band-Aids and tourniquets, which stop bleeding, are tax-free. In jails, many places, women have to buy their own tampons because they are not considered medical products. And they don't make a lot of money. Whereas other medical supplies are free for women in jails. For this year, for the first time, tampons are free in federal prisons for female inmates. And most of the legislatures and the houses of legislature in this country are run by men making these laws. And clearly a number of them have low perceptual intelligence on gender equality. So I want to go back to those original questions I asked. Expensive sunglasses and a cheap pair at Venice Beach both have high levels of UV protection because it's federally mandated that all sunglasses have to have high levels of UV protection. Organic food that's high in sugar and fat is less healthy than non-organic food that's lower in those. Electric cars are worse for the environment while they're being manufactured because they increase algae blooms. However, electric cars being driven are better for the environment than gas-powered cars. So you see, perception is not always reality. I'd like to thank you all very much.